Hi, my name is Jeremy Miget. I'm with Zenson Creations. I'm here to show you how to assemble my 18-foot motorized jib. The motorized jib can be used for any number of applications, either whether you want to use it for high shots or if you want to use it for low shots but have nice smooth pans. First, we'll start with the tripod. In the case, first thing you want to grab is the microphone stand and the monitor platform and set that up. I'll put over the top to take some weight. And just snug that on there. We're just going to use the tripod alone. You want to leave yourself at least probably 4 feet to 5 feet from the back end of where you're operating. Inside here, there's lots of little cases that have hardware. Just pull those out, leave them to the side. Next thing is we'll take this. This is the pivot point or the yoke. Right and left is from operator. So if you're standing at the back operation, front, back, left, right. The hook, this little loop here will always be on the left-hand side, but it is labeled. The next is to actually pull out the jib, which is actually 5 sections within itself. You have P for the pivot point for whenever you're doing standard 8 foot or longer is marked. 8 foot pivot point is this point here. If this is W, stands for the extra weight bar. First thing I'm going to do is pull all these out. Note to be careful because they do have little washers on the side and they can be knocked off. And the arrows that are on the sides of these indicate which way the hardware is fed in. So if you see an arrow this way, you feed your bolt in this way. And I've got it set to where it alternates to try to keep it from all the hardware pulling it and bowing the thing to one side. All the hardware is numbered. Each hardware numbered will get 2 washers and 1 wing nut. Now, the way it is bolt number 1 is actually in conjunction with the pivot point. So what we'll do is we'll assemble the first 2. Now they overlap in 1 foot sections. So you insert, put them like so. And what we'll do is you'll take hardware number 1, washer on each side, feed it through, and this is only finger tight. Now we take this section, bring it over to here, and we'll line it up. This is your pivot point, 8 foot or longer. This is your pivot point. So for now, we set it on that. Bring it so it rests like this. So now you're set like this. All you have to do is now undo the bolt and hardware here. Just take this out. Wedge this down, line up the holes. All the way through. So now we'll go on to just adding sections. So in order to do so, you take the next 2 numbers, so you'll see this is 2 and 3. So you find hardware 2 and 3, and then you grab the next section, and you can tell the one that overlapped, the one that has no numbers, the numbers continue on consecutively towards the end. So again, you feed it in, you overlap them to 1 foot so your holes line up. You take number 2. Again, the arrow showing from this side. Now you may have to lift up a little bit and wiggle, just kind of finagle. Sometimes the pressure gets, you may have to screw in the bolt a little bit, but it should slide in. Again, washer and a wing nut, washer on each side. And then once you get that snug, lift up, bring this down to the end, and ready to move on to the next section, which is 4 and 5. Next step at this point would be to put these little clips in. These little clips are what holds the cable along the top of the jib, and they go in the holes that are just opposite of everywhere where there was a hardware. The actual control arm, and it has a weight bar on one end, and then the control on the other. The bolt assembly, which you leave on when you're packing it away, has a C on it for control, and just also to iterate, the pivot point bolt, which stays with the yoke, also has a P for pivot point. Again, a washer on both sides, and it just hangs. So again, ultimately, this will be weights this is where your control will go. This is just the additional weight bar. Then what we'll do is we'll take the clamps. One is for the motorized head, one is for retract focus control. Just go on so the labels are pointed down. What I do is grab the monitor, and the monitor has a little post. This, basically turn this like so. Here, to there, and then your monitor can go right on top. Loosen it out, feed it in. Tighten this on extremely secure. Make sure it's nice and snug. And then I usually push it right up against the control arm, square it off. Make sure it's all nice and tight. All right, the first step to putting the camera motorized head on is to put the camera platform on. This one is a little tricky. You take off the wing nut and the washer. You're gonna retract this back, this bolt back. You gotta watch all this hardware is gonna come off. So you just wanna take half of it off, bring it up, put it through. And then this is just where the tricky part is. You put one on, kind of put the bolt through, another one, kind of line it up, come through. And again, everything's hand tight. You don't want it snug, just so it's snug and it's moving. And as you can see, it's centered and it's, for the most part, it's balanced. The next thing is going to be your leveling cable. Now, they have turnbuckles. There's two sections. It's one big cable, but it does come apart. Now, basically how this works is the one with the block goes down at the yoke, the pivot point. Now, how this works is this cable hooks onto here. And you can just kind of bring this up like so, and lay it back like that. And then you retract the cable back. Now, when you get back to the yoke end, you have the exact same thing. You have a hook and an eyelet. So what you want to do is put this in, and then as you see, there's like a little nub. It fits inside and pulls it tight. Now, once you get to this point, you want to swing this around, and you'll see that it'll take weight. Now, you have turnbuckles on this end and that end, and this is where, by doing this, you can kind of get a rough level front to back. Now you want to split the difference. You don't want to use all of it on this end. If you get like halfway, I just put some WD-40 to make this a little bit better. So the reason why is I'm just kind of balancing them out. And as you can see, I come back down to this end. It's a little high, and you might want to just take it so it does go up, because ultimately when you put a camera on here, it's going to weight it down. So you want to overcompensate a little bit and have it already kind of pointed up. And at this point, we're now ready to mount the motorized head. The motorized head has the loom. Now, all the cables are on with it. So what you're going to need is you're going to need the handle, the 100mm ball adapter, and then the clamp mount that holds the handle and the 100mm ball. There's a lot of moving parts, so you just got to be careful. Now, in order to mount this onto the jib, we will have to add this, the 100mm ball, to it. Throw that on. That's snug, and then you just have these. That's here. And you can use that to mount that on, and that will be your motorized head. Okay, so now what you'll do is you'll bring the motorized head over. Again, you want to take all the cabling wants to point towards the front. Put your 100mm ball in. Now, as you see, it's just snug. We're just kind of sitting. You can see it's kind of gotten close to level. Now, what I always do is I always run the cable down the right side of the camera. And for now, I'm just going to drape it right here just to keep it back. Now, the first thing you want to do is the only connection is the motorized, for all the motorized, the two motors for the actual head, motorized head. And it's just one connection. It goes in. Then you have a cable here, and and one more down here. These are the two that will actually attach to the motors. On this side, I've got the tilt. So what it would do is you want to make sure that the gear lines up with that, with the cog, like that. You slide it on, and you do not engage it. You leave it off, and you snug it so it stays away from it. You don't want to have it engaged until you've gotten it completely balanced. Same thing with your pan. You have the motor. Slide it on. Just keep it off of the cog so that way it can still spin freely. The next step would be then to run the cable down the jib neck. Now each one of these that we put in earlier is just like these little office clips. And you just kind of set it up as you go. Kind of put it up over the top. Just kind of pinch it in as you lay it in. Pinch and close. Now as you get closer down here to the pivot point, this is where stuff is going to start splitting off. Now, right here you've got a D-tap power. Now this D-tap power cable. Bring this whole thing over the top into this hook, but that one little D-tap power cable splits off at the yoke, the pivot point, and we'll go in. Now both sides of the yoke have a V-mount battery plate for the IDX batteries that I have in the case. Now be very, very careful on how you insert these. There is a proprietary way to connect D-taps. Most people are aware of this, but even I myself have put these in backwards and fried monitors. I destroyed a monitor and a plate because I put it in backwards, and it wasn't because I didn't know better, it was because they fit. They will fit the other way. It's possible. So I've marked them with a little white line, so that way as all my D-taps have a line on the face, so that way if you look, you know you're going to be putting them in the right way. A D-tap cable to 2.1 millimeter power. Now I know that since this is D-tap, I don't need to worry about my port. So what I'm going to do is pull this power. This power is again going to the motorized head, which is actually going to be powering the focus control system. This, go ahead again, you see the white lines, plug that one in, plug that in, and you take this power up, and then now you can. That powers the monitor. What we have left on this configuration here is 3 cables off the end. 2 of these, the ones marked red and blue, are for the retract focus control. They're integrated into the loom because if you want to use them, they're there. The other one is going to be for the motorized head. So we'll keep these 2 separate for the thing. We'll bring this, plugs into the back. There's a specific one it goes in, and then we have that, and we're good. And then the last thing when it comes to control outside of the focus control, which again we'll get to in a bit, is powering the actual motorized head. More power cables that will come off of the D-tap. Inside here, the cabling configuration that I have is a D-tap to a 4-pin. And once again, we still have white marks and white marks on the battery plate over here. We can just run this up, and then once again, the 4-pin comes around to the back of the controller. Now, when it comes to camera configuration, this is very important because this is where you're going to make this decision when you're putting the camera onto the actual motorized head. The configuration this is, if you're standing at control, if you have the yoke on the right-hand side, then the control will be if you pull back, your camera will go up. If you push forward, your camera will go down, much like video games or flight simulation. If you don't like that, if you want your camera to go up when you push up and down when you push down, then you need to set it up with the yoke on this side. Side to side, there is a control switch at the control station. You can, left goes left and right goes right, but if you flip the switch, it does reverse it. So you can reverse side to side at the control. So what you want to do is try to get the camera to where it balances almost on its own, front to back. Once you get it to there, you snug it down. Now the next phase is you want to balance it up and down. And what you do is you adjust it here, And you slide the whole plate forward and back based on, and again, forward and back will allow you to get the camera balanced to where it doesn't tilt forward or back. Snug it down. This is your little start-stop feature. Again, this is primarily for the Panasonic or any camera that has a little SS start-stop port on their camera. You have these. These are now your focus, and they're labeled on the cables themselves. So it says direct right on the cable, red one, and it says direct right in on the sides of here, so you know where this is direct. These have little dots on them so you can line them up. We're pretty much set, and it still looks like we're pretty close to balance, but we still have to add the power. Now again, here's the D-tap, again with the marked white line. We connect the D-tap, and this is the splitter, which splits the D-tap for 2 power sources, so that way we can run two different focus motors. And then the last will be your HDMI, which needs to go into the back of wherever your camera is, has its port. Back. Okay, so now that we have all the cabling, everything's connected, now we're gonna do the rebalance one more time before we engage the motors. We're ready to engage the motors. So what we do now is it's the same thing. Now that we go back to where these were, now there's adjustable, you loosen it up. Again, this is fine if it moves around, because now that it's balanced, it'll be okay. Loosen it up. Now you can slide in and out and up and down. So what you want to do is you make sure, line it up, make sure you get it into the cogs. And then when you tighten it down, you want to make sure it stays. And you'll know it's in there. It's not gonna, the motor's now holding it in place. And what happens is if you don't have it engaged, we'll do the same thing with the one up top. If you don't have it fully engaged, if you haven't got the cogs in there and you tighten it down, when you go to run it, you'll hear it missing the cogs and it'll just make all kinds of noise, and that's bad, so then you stop and make sure it's reset. But right now, you can feel the tension of the motor and just when you move it, you can feel that the motor now has gripped the cog. So now we're set as far as the camera. So now, this is the modified configuration that we've come to realize is a lot more conducive to a jib operator. Basically what we've done is taken the finger wheel off of one of the grips and put it on the other. So now both finger wheels are on one grip. And now we've got it set up in such a manner that once you feed it into here, tighten it down, now you have one on your finger and one on your thumb, and it's all on one control. So now you have your pan and tilt for your head on one side, your focus and zoom or aperture and focus, whatever your configuration allows you. So at this point, we will go ahead and mark, we got a left and our right. Now, customarily, your left-hand side will be your focus. So I will put the left cable on the left-hand side, on the one that would be my thumb. And the red one I will put back here. And that will be, on this situation, I have a zoom lens, so this one will be zoom. So it allows you zoom and focus control. And if you look onto the monitor, you'll now see I do have zoom control with my index finger, and with my thumb, I now have focus control. Now, when you do this, you have to be careful of these cables on the back side when you're putting these on. But as soon as you put the first weight on, you'll immediately see how this now shifts and the weight kind of swings a bit. Start with the weights, heavier weights, biggest on this. Again, you may have to turn like the wing nut to get it to slide all the way on. Just slide on, start on the control arm first, and then extra weights will go on the auxiliary weight bar. That's pretty much it for the assembly of the 18-foot motorized head jib.